evening, I'm Diane in Hong Kong and welcome to ViuTV News. Coming up on tonight's show. Taiwan heads to the polls to choose local leaders in what's seen as a key test of support for the island's pro-independence ruling party. Among a handful of referendums held on the island as well is one that could see Taiwan become the first place in Asia to legalize same-sex marriage. And a key vote is around the corner for Hong Kong, too. 5 candidates go head-to-head tomorrow in the West Kowloon by-election, a seat vacated by disqualified lawmaker Lau Siu-lai. Well, our top story tonight, a big voting day in Taiwan. Across the island, voters flocked to the polls to choose mayors and make their voices heard in a number of game-changing referendums. All these serve as a major test of confidence for President Tsai Ing-wen and her pro-independence Democratic Progressive Party. Early this morning, Tsai placed her vote in the new Taipei City mayoral election. She faces rising pressure from Beijing, which has been flexing its diplomatic muscle to cut Taipei off from its allies. Among the most contested regions is Kaohsiung, which has been a DPP stronghold for 2 decades.
Kaohsiung residents' passion and enthusiasm is really moving this time, not only for our city, but all of Taiwan. I could see in all our fellow residents' eyes the red-hot desire for change.
Well, a host of key issues are also on the line today in Taiwan as the island voted in 10 referendums. One of them is a game changer for the LGBT community there. Taiwan's top court already ruled in favor of same-sex marriage, but now voters will get a say. For more on that, I'm joined in the studio by our reporter, Dhruv Titika, who has been following the issue. Now, there's certainly a lot at stake for the LGBT community, but this is a highly controversial referendum, right? So tell us more about that.
Quite right, Diane. Well, conservatives certainly mounted a powerful push against the LGBT movement in the lead-up to this referendum. But many see this campaign as part of a wider problem that really ties back to the incumbent president and her government. Her popularity has been waning in recent months because of controversial domestic reform initiatives. And with political pressure from Beijing, there's a little bit of reluctance to push forward the same-sex union narrative. That's certainly going to stand at odds with Taiwan's global reputation as a beacon of liberalism, in Asia at least. It certainly had the island divided, with rights activists saying the referendum is discriminatory because it goes against the 2017 ruling, which declared that same-sex couples had the right, the constitutional right, should I say, to legally marry. But this will be among a number of referendums that were held today, should I say, and chief among them is centered on Taiwan's identity heading into the Olympics.
Well, on that note, that's a major topic as well that's being discussed. Walk us through this Olympic status push by Taiwan. What are the regional implications we're talking about here?
Absolutely. Well, from what we know so far, athletes from Taiwan will be competing at the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo under the flag of Chinese Taipei. The self-governing island, though, is going to decide whether it should just stick to Taiwan instead. Now, this has major implications, not just for the world of sport, but for international relations in general, because as we know, Beijing has long claimed the island as its own, and any bid by Taipei to move away from that identity could certainly rile the higher-ups over there. Taiwan has for decades been unable to compete under its own flag and its own name, and that was only made worse when the International Olympic Committee recently made clear its views on the issue by saying that any move to do so would see the island expelled from the IOC. Now, it's unclear if the IOC would actually go through with that if this referendum does swing in that direction. But it certainly does raise some game-changing questions for Hong Kong, which, much like Taiwan, has been grappling with its identity in relation to China. But as I mentioned earlier, those questions still hang in the air, and the results of other referendums, which are on the line, including a nuclear power referendum, which asks the public whether nuclear facilities should cease all operations by 2025.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that, Dhruv. Now, another big election is set to get underway tomorrow, this time on Hong Kong soil. 5 candidates are vying for 1 seat in the Legco West Kowloon by-election. The seat was vacated by pro-Democrat Lau Siu-lai back in 2016, whose slow-motion swearing in at Legco was ruled invalid in court. Lydia Sung has more on what each candidate has at the top of their list.
Dick Hay was a spokesperson of pro-Beijing Defend Hong Kong campaign and is now joining the race as an independent. He's raising questions over the government's Lantau Tomorrow reclamation plan and suggesting authorities develop in Kowloon, where there are plenty of aged buildings. What's most pressing for Zheng Li-wen, however, is the city's immigration policy. She said she wants the CE to renegotiate the policy that allows 150 mainland Chinese to enter Hong Kong on one-way permits without having to go through any screening here. As one of the most prominent voices in a pro-democracy camp, he's blasted the government for expelling Financial Times journalist Victor Mallet and disqualifying politicians. If elected back into the legislature, he said he wants to grill Carrie Lam over what she would do to turn around the waning confidence in one country, two systems. Frederick Fung, meanwhile, is demanding the government provide solutions to the crowds of tourists in Tung Chung brought about by the Hong Kong-Zhuhai-Macau Bridge. Fung is a former legislator and initially supported Lau's bid to run, saying he wouldn't run again. Dental services for the elderly, meanwhile, topped the list for the pro-establishment camp's consensus candidate Rebecca Chan. Chan was previously a political assistant for the Food and Health Bureau and used to be a TV reporter for more than a decade.
Well, the chief executive this morning addressed concerns over her policy address proposal to build a civil service academy using a Kwun Tong jobs training center for the disabled. In her opening speech at the Summit on Disability Inclusion, Carrie Lam promised better vocational training and skills development for those with disabilities. She insisted the government is placing importance on the Shine Skills Centre relocation plans to make sure the transition is smooth and that the new services offered will be even better.
After reviewing all the different existing programs for disabled people, the government will invite the Vocational Training Council to consider offering an upgraded version of jobs training and skills development services. That, in our mind, is to combine the best features of the Integrated Vocational Training Centre and Shine Skills Centre.
Well, Liberal Party's James Tian has called on the government to start drafting the Article 23 security law now, saying it's better to do it sooner than later. Speaking on a TV news show, Tian said the government has been accused of shifting goalposts when dealing with independence calls because it only has existing local laws to act upon. He said Article 23 would provide clear legal basis for the government's actions in this regard. Tian also dismissed CE Carrie Lam's stance that it's not yet the right time for such legislation, as it could be delayed infinitely. He added the law would only get tougher if it's enacted later, as China is becoming more powerful. All right, coming up next, the latest from the world of business. Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development Edward Yao has warned that nowhere is immune from the impact of the ongoing US-China trade wars, including Hong Kong. Speaking on a radio show, Yao said the city's economic and trade growth this year is still in positive territory. However, he said the fourth quarter will continue to slow down, and next year's situation will depend on the development of Sino-US relations.
No one is spared in the world. Suddenly, everyone's trade cost has increased by 10 to 25%. First, we cannot expect no pain. This must be clear to the industry. There are no shortcuts or magic wands. We've been discussing this issue with the industry for many months.
Well, investors might not have had a lot to be grateful for following the results from the post-holiday trading session this week. Stocks in the U.S. took a tumble following Thanksgiving, with the three big indices posting some of their steepest declines since March. The energy sector also took a hit as oil prices slipped. Angela Moore has all the details.
U.S. stocks closed lower in a shortened post-holiday trading session on Friday. The three major U.S. indices fell well over 3% for the week, with the Dow and the Nasdaq posting their biggest weekly percentage decline since March.
The stocks are trying to reprice to one new reality, and that is a slowdown in growth. We know that 2018 saw peak levels of growth rates. So GDP grew by 4.2% in the second quarter. Earnings growth will be 20%. We're not going to see these high levels of growth rates. But we still believe that growth will continue to be positive, just at a slower pace.
Oil prices plunged again, and they took the entire energy sector along for the ride, including oil majors such as Chevron and Exxon. Declines in Apple and Amazon underscore the drop in technology and internet stocks. But European markets managed to end the day mostly higher, with France and Germany leading the way. The oil-heavy FTSE was the exception, battered by the deepening crude rout.
But Black Friday sales in the U.S. certainly didn't disappoint this year as shoppers across the country snapped up doorbuster deals, while online retailers racked up their biggest sales gains. Heavy discounts saw shoppers cash in on toys, clothing and electronics again. Reports suggest the strong consumer spending points to a healthy economy and rising wages. Meanwhile, it wasn't exactly a festive day for everyone on the stock market. Shares of retailers like Macy's, Kohl's and Target all closed down in the post-holiday trading session. All right, time for a break now, but up next, infrastructure and income could be the latest targets of climate change in the U.S., according to a chilling new report. Stay tuned to find out how.
One world, infinite visions. ViuTV 6. Hoop stars. Courtside drama. This is the NBA. ViuTV, the only free TV channel that brings you featured NBA games live. From regular season to the playoffs. With full coverage of the NBA Finals. Follow ViuTV for the Road of the Champions. Bilingual commentary is available, so you can catch it in English, even on Channel 99.
Durant right to the rack. Oh, that is a man's jam.
Make it an NBA weekend every week, right here on ViuTV. Hard-hitting investigative reports. Newsmaker interviews. Compelling human interest stories. Life-changing reports. News magazine that draws you in. 2020. Tonight at 9:30 on ViuTV 6. Created by the legendary chef Gordon Ramsay. 9 home cooks sharpen their knives, tie their aprons and battle it out. Cookery combat under extreme pressure. Amateur cooks go through rigorous challenges. Bust a gut to impress celebrity chefs from around the world.
Good luck.
Who can stand the heat of the kitchen? Who can take home a cash prize and earn the coveted title of Culinary Genius? Sunday night at 8 on ViuTV 6. La Liga on ViuTV. Bringing you action from one of Europe's most exciting leagues. It's football with a Latin touch. This Sunday, join us for the football fever. La Liga. Sevilla take on Valladolid. Sunday night at 11:10. Live on Channel 96, ViuTV 6.
Welcome back to ViuTV News. Now, a former British fraud investigator who was jailed in China 4 years ago is pushing the UK to ban Chinese state media, CCTV, and its international arm, CGTN there. Peter Humphrey has filed a complaint to the Office of Communications, citing gross human rights violations.
获取个人信息，有时候是
It starts with this 2013 televised confession on CCTV, which Humphrey says was forced. It took place before Humphrey and his wife's trial for illegally acquiring personal information of Chinese nationals. They were jailed in 2014 for up to 2.5 years, but were deported from China the next year. The British regulator confirmed it's received Humphrey's complaint, saying it would take action against the broadcaster if his claims are confirmed. Well, there are complaints from tourists traveling from Zhuhai to Hong Kong via the mega bridge after a ticketing arrangement was put in place this weekend. Starting from today, Zhuhai visitors who are going to the Hong Kong port by shuttle bus have to purchase tickets online beforehand. They could buy them via the WeChat account of the bus operator or a Zhuhai ticketing service. This morning, signs were put up at the Zhuhai port saying all shuttle tickets had been sold out. An information desk has also been set up there. So far, there have been mixed reactions to the arrangement. Let's turn to overseas news now. The U.S. has issued the starkest warning yet on the impact of climate change on the economy. A Congress-backed report says global warming could cost the country billions of US dollars by the end of this century. It stands at odds with the narrative Trump and his administration have been pushing, casting doubt over the science of climate change. Gillian Kitchener reports.
The U.S. government on Friday issued a new report detailing how climate change will cost the U.S. economy hundreds of billions of dollars by the end of the century. The 1,600-page report warns that global warming will disproportionately hurt the poor and damage everything from human health to infrastructure and agricultural production. In fact, the study shows the U.S. economy could lose more than 10% of its GDP by the year 2100 due to the devastating impacts of climate change. The congressionally mandated report was written with the help of more than a dozen government agencies and departments. It puts a price tag of $141 billion on heat-related deaths by the end of the century. Also, sea level rise could cost the U.S. $118 billion. Friday's report supplements a study issued last year that concluded humans are the main driver of global warming. It also suggests projections of further damage could change if greenhouse gas emissions are sharply curbed. But the report is at odds with the Trump administration, which has been rolling back environmental and climate protections to maximize production of domestic fossil fuels. Trump and several members of his cabinet also repeatedly cast doubt on the science of climate change, saying the causes are not yet settled.
Certainly will be interesting to see what comes after this report. Now, staying in the U.S., the Trump administration has asked the Supreme Court there to review a ruling on the Pentagon's policy of restricting military service by transgender people. Transgenders with gender dysphoria will be barred from serving in the military. The policy replaces Trump's announcement last year of a complete ban on transgender service members over military focus and medical cost concerns. Federal courts had refused to lift injunctions issued against Trump's original ban to allow the updated policy to be enforced. By seeking a high court review before the appeals court ruling, the government said it wanted to ensure the Supreme Court could review the dispute before its term ends next June. Elsewhere now, fierce fighting with Islamic State forces in Nigeria may have reached another pinnacle, as reports suggest as many as 100 soldiers may have been killed by an offshoot this past weekend. The military, however, is yet to confirm any of that. Here's Lucy Fielder with the details.
As many as 100 Nigerian soldiers have been killed in the northeast of the country since Sunday, with the finger of blame pointed at an Islamic State offshoot. That information comes from 5 security sources, all speaking on condition of anonymity. Nigeria's northeast is a restive region, where the government is battling Islamist militants, including Islamic State West Africa and Boko Haram. The administration of President Muhammadu Buhari, who faces an election battle in February, has repeatedly claimed to have won the war against the extremist insurgents. That was refuted by an attack on Sunday in Metele in Borno State. On Thursday, the Nigerian Senate suspended its session in honour of the 44 soldiers they said had died. 4 of the anonymous security sources said around 100 had died in the Metele incident alone, while the 5th said that 96 had died in Metele, but also in other attacks. Military spokesmen did not respond to repeated requests for comment.
Now, the UK's controversial divorce from the EU is already beginning to cause headaches for the future of a post-Brexit nation. One group there, though, is hoping it calls attention to items like household goods, which are already facing soaring costs. And as Pascal Davies reports, they've launched a pop-up shop in London to campaign for a final say in the deal.
It may be Black Friday, but in this store in South London, there's no savings to be made as prices have gone up. The group People's Vote, which is campaigning for a public say on the final outcome of the Brexit deal, have launched a pop-up store to show what it believes would be a worrying life outside the EU under the current proposed deal. Open for one day only, it's selling products such as chlorinated chicken.
Costs are going to rise big time for the people of Britain. We've got great deals in there, like totally expensive chlorinated chicken. You can buy yourself some tomato betchup. There's some sanitary products for the longest, worst period of time ever. It's all going on, so make sure you come inside and grab a not bargain.
New analysis by the group shows inflation caused by uncertainty has seen prices in shops jump by almost 6%. With everyday goods such as bread rising by 4.5%. While wages, according to the London School of Economics, have also taken a hit since the 2016 referendum. The average household now brings in £448 less per year, equivalent to 1 week's wages.
We don't have a full deal, but even with the deal that we have, we know we're going to pay a 50 billion divorce bill. We know that food prices are going to go up. That's just not acceptable.
The group says a vote on the Brexit divorce bill should be taken to the public. But that looks doubtful, as Parliament will likely vote on Theresa May's proposed deal in mid-December. And cross-party opposition could mean a no deal by default.
All right, time now for sports. In golf, and to that anticipated showdown between 2 of the sport's biggest legends, Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson. After a nail-biting duel in Las Vegas, it was Mickelson who claimed the $9 million winner-takes-all prize. The match play between the 2 Americans went to a 22nd hole before 49-year-old Mickelson sank a 4-foot putt for victory. 42-year-old Woods chipped in on the 17th to stop Mickelson putting for the match, then missed a chance himself from 8 feet on the first extra hole. That led to a sudden death playoff, which Mickelson edged in. Rugby next, and the autumn internationals are going to be drawing to a close today. But that's not before Giants England take on Australia in Twickenham later tonight. The home side have won 5 tests in a row against the Wallabies and are aiming to record another victory later, as Oliver Regan now explains.
A final obstacle for England to tackle this autumn, Australia. And after failing to impress for much of last week's match against Japan, England forwards coach Steve Borthwick knows the side need to step up against the Wallabies.
There's always aspects we want to improve upon, and that's what you've got to do in international rugby. We know the margin's very small, and you've got to keep getting better, and that's what we work upon. So you want to make your strengths stronger, and those areas that aren't so strong, you want to get them better than what they were.
England have been injury-ravaged this autumn, and it's meant that several inexperienced players and debutants have played here at Twickenham for the very first time. But Borthwick's been impressed with what he's seen.
There's a long list of players a long list of forwards that are unavailable right now for us, but that always gives opportunities for other players. And I think we've got players that come in and really done well. When I look at the strength and depth that we're starting to build, the players have taken their opportunities.
Australia have won only 4 of their last 14 tests. Add to that 5 straight defeats to England since Jones took charge. And the mind games between the 2 sides have been in full flow. But Slade is not taking the Aussies lightly.
We've got some very athletic guys, some big lads carrying, and obviously they've got a lot of pace and athleticism out wide as well. So they do play quite an expansive game. So we've got to be defensively very sound to stop those guys in the outside channels, but also just got to be fronting up all over the park, really.
England are boosted by the return of Manu Tuolangi to the bench after a series of injuries over 4 years. He'll be hoping to help them both extend their impressive run against Australia and end 2018 in style.
Finally, in tennis, Davis Cup action. Croatia are now in the driving seat against France after a stellar display in Lille gave them a 2-love lead in the final. Croatia's Borna Coric beat Jeremy Chardy in the opener 6-2, 7-5, 6-4. And world number 7, Marin Cilic sealed the deal with an easy win over injury-hit Joe-Wilfried Tsonga, 6-3, 7-5, 6-4. The victory takes Croatia to within one match of winning a first Davis Cup in 13 years. Well, that's a wrap. We'll be here again with some updates on stories later on. We'll see you later.
Coming up next, the Lazy Chef.